The entire plots of Felix's Minecraft series started because he killed a bunch of sheep for food in the first episode. Yeah, this is what we need, like 20-minute hyper analyzing every single episode. Finally, people are picking up on the allegory and all the subtle hints that I've been trying to keep in there, all the philosophy, all the nuances.
Over the course of 2 days, I sat and watched every single PewDiePie Minecraft video. I rewatched the ones from his main series that started around a year ago today. There were 49 episodes in the main series as I write this, all adding to a total of 19 hours, 47 minutes, 26 seconds, 27 if we round up, or for all the math teachers out there, 1,168 minutes, 36 seconds. I watched it in 2 times speed, which honestly was even more of a mistake because now every video I watch of his, he sounds like he's talking very slowly. Also, by the time I got to the end, I couldn't remember anything I watched and vaguely remember leaving this note for myself when I woke up. So, after countless hours that I just counted of watching PewDiePie play Minecraft, I think I can say I know anything and everything when it comes to the lore and the big brain philosophy you'll find hidden deep in his Minecraft series. To start off, I'm going to go through the lore and talk about what's happened so far, what you might have missed, and everything in between. Then we'll cover more of the philosophical side of things. So let's get started. In the first episode, he talked about how he hasn't played since Alpha, so we already know that he's going to need a lot of help figuring things out. He names his world Broland and he immediately tries to ride a horse, after which he types help in chat and then proceeds to fall into a puddle. And what's a puddle made out of? Water. From almost the very start of the series, we can already draw some connections, like Joergon being there to support him and a mysterious force that seems to answer his calls. Some things happen, like him killing a villager, showcasing very early the disregard he has for villagers and the overall life that inhabits this realm. Acting as karma for the life he took, when he attacked the Iron Golem, he was forced to accept the idea of mortality and abide by its rules. Midway through, he meets this maybe not so random chicken and he punches it. We'll get back to that later. We also see the first use of his catchphrase, or rather his stand cry of "eat when running low on health. Eat. Finally, to cap it off, he builds a simple home around a Swedish birch tree out of cobblestone. Quite humbling. And without a roof. Don't worry, we're not going to go episode by episode, but these first couple set everything else up for the rest of the series. That might sound crazy, but just keep that idea in the back of your mind for now, because guess who we meet in the second episode? Virgin Turtle, of course, the main mastermind behind the entire series. Nah, I'm just kidding, but we do meet Virgin Turtle. He also runs into another lone chicken, and he tries to feed it, but again, we'll worry about that part later. The most important thing right now is that he stumbles upon a herd of sheep. This is fairly normal as sheeps naturally spawn in the game, you know, not too much of note. However, keep note of this dark gray sheep. He accidentally shears it and makes him breed with another one of the sheeps he captured. This sheep and its child are very important players to what will happen later on in the story. He also goes into a mine shaft and finds some beetroot. I guess you could say certain plot seeds have been planted. I know, I'm a comedic genius. But I'm not as funny as when PewDiePie said this.
This is the video series that will convert more people to Minecraft than ever in history. Notch will come back from his grave just to thank me.
Haha, yeah, that totally didn't happen or anything like that. Anyways, he closes off the episode by working on a new house, still with no roof. Before we move on, there seems to be a certain someone in a certain place right around here. Look familiar? Well, we see who it is a mere 20 seconds into the next episode. WaterSheep. Both he and Beetroot appear only a couple blocks away from each other, already on opposite sides of the river. Literally. All the while, Pewds is simply focused on Joergon, not knowing what's going on in the background. He tames Joergon the first and makes his way over to who we know as WaterSheep and insulted him for the first time, sealing fate. Then, after building a nether portal, he tries to ride Joergon through it, to no avail. Almost as if fate tried to give him a warning of what's to come if he ever tries to attempt it. Skipping ahead, still getting some footing in how the world works, he makes his way to Nether, sleeping in a bed, blowing himself up. This is where his refusal to listen to fate comes back to bite him, as he tries to bring Joergon into Nether. But as they say, what goes in doesn't always come out. He builds Joergon I a memorial, oblivious to the reasons of why he actually died. He moves on to find Joergon II, but the happiness is short-lived as he activates the trap in a pyramid, killing him instantly and exploding his stuff. Everything that has happened so far was a test, and based on his reaction, he failed.
This is how murderers. This is my evil arc beginning, alright? If anything else happens, I'm gonna be very angry.
Teetering on the balance of good and evil, Pewds fully rejects his fate and becomes a lawful evil force, but evil nonetheless. He subconsciously grabs magma blocks for this very reason. His curiosity of what it was turned to interest as he learned that the blocks can burn. As he dives further into losing his humanity by destroying parts of the world around him, killing the life that surrounds him, and lacking the love and care for possible companions that could pound him. I'm sorry, I just wanted to rhyme. He slaughters cows and unknowingly bestows a curse onto a cow that will be passed down through the generations of boat cows. He went off to build a second summer house that will be important later. It also doesn't have a complete roof. But for now, even after the murder of a wandering villager for his llamas, it's not until he threatens WaterSheep with an axe where one of the mysterious forces watching over him steps in. Through the guise of a simple Minecraft dog, the being that makes up Sven was sent as a guide to bring Pewds back from the brink. Though it might be a long road for Pewds to take back to the light, Sven was able to keep him at bay and leave the threats he made against WaterSheep as just that, threats. He even saved a village from a raid despite dying multiple times, not wanting to give up on them, wanting to save that baby villager and let him live a happy life. We see now that Pewds isn't some being of lawful evil he was previously, but slowly making his way back to a more neutral force to restore balance in the world. That was until another mysterious force reared its ugly head, separating Sven from Pewds, almost causing him to lose Joergon in the process. Though Sven was able to survive, it was the first sign that Sven isn't the only being out there with a plan for Pewds. Side note, this is where eat becomes a staple in the series. Eat. Blaming WaterSheep for Sven being trapped underwater, in a blind rage, Pewds yells at WaterSheep as he makes his way back trying to desperately save Sven from his water prison. Again, following the laws of karma, the anger he displayed follows through and comes back at him in the form of Boat Cow and the llama that joined him, disappearing. Coming to the realization WaterSheep might be the cause behind all this, Pewds imprisons him with iron bars, making sure WaterSheep can't escape as he begins to massacre the innocent sheep living in the farm. This was the breaking point, but there wasn't much that WaterSheep could do at the moment due to the iron bars. So he bided his time by being constantly abused and barely kept alive just so Pewds can watch as he suffers. All the while, the mysterious force that tried to drown Sven awaits. With Sven slowly losing control over Pewds' actions, a seemingly third mysterious force comes into the picture, as it influences Pewds, causing him to become more cruel, especially towards those of the sheep kind. He goes to the Nether to collect some quartz for a special structure.
And I'm saving them up because I want to build a special structure later. Foreshadowing. What is he gonna build, Felix? I don't know. I'm not gonna say.
We won't see that structure till a couple episodes later, but just know, this is episode 12. Arriving back, we see one of the things Pewds has planned for WaterSheep, admitting to having a desire to build a torture chamber for WaterSheep. But for now, he leaves a bell to ring next to him as a placeholder. However, after spending some time away from WaterSheep and his farm, he starts building a Japanese-style house that he will later give to Sven. During this time, we see glimpses of the lighter side still in Pewds as he acts like a wingman for Virgin Turtle, gave the bone horse he owned the gift of a name that will unlock his full potential of being the first upside-down horse, Dinnerbone. We even see him die trying to protect the turtle eggs.
It's cracking! No! Ah!
It shows that not all the light in Pewds is gone, and Sven still has a very important stake in helping to guide him through the dark. The only issue being is that Sven only has a strong influence on Pewds when he's by his side. So by surprising Sven with his new house, Pewds left him there as he went back to his own house by himself to torture WaterSheep. Except this time, his threats were followed by actions, as if that third mysterious force of possible beat origin was fully able to possess Pewds' actions. He murdered WaterSheep with the very blocks he found at the beginning of his evil arc. It didn't just stop at WaterSheep though. The onslaught continued as sheep after sheep, and even a chicken, fell victim to Pewds' bloodlust. With the deed finally done, the mysterious third force chose to hint at their true identity and posed as WaterSheep, leaving Pewds a map that will lead him to a mansion that will reveal who's been behind this mysterious third force.
What is this?
With WaterSheep seemingly gone and Feigi's influence on Pewds slowly losing its grip, together with Sven, Pewds builds a meatball as a monument for everything WaterSheep believed in: friendship, loyalty, and trust. Finally, coming to terms with what he did and forgiving himself, he built a memorial for WaterSheep and then eventually a church. But just because he forgave himself does not mean he's been forgiven by the other. The other is the Council. Making the church out of quartz only spat in the face of the soon-to-be head of the Council, as it showed his intention of murdering WaterSheep, his intention of murdering his father, only a couple episodes later. For too long did the son have to watch as his father was abused, tortured, and then eventually killed by Pewds. The son tried to take away those who mattered to Pewds many times, the most important one being when he lost Sven. Shortly after the sheep massacre, he finds some of the drowned hidden, or as he calls them, water people, outside of his house. Little did he know that they were conspiring against him with the son. Because only a couple episodes later, who was it that chased Pewds in the direction of the underwater ravine that would later trap and separate him from Sven? The water people. Though at the moment the son had to bite his tongue, as the council still has not yet been finalized, so he can't take complete control of it yet, and at that moment there was a bigger issue of Feige possibly taking influence over Pewds again. So they had Pewds sacrifice one of Feigi's kin to receive the demands of the now dead WaterSheep beyond the grave. WaterSheep demanded Pewds to find a stronghold, and that's what he did, but before he went off to find the stronghold, he had to find a new DJ to put into the boat since the previous boat cow was struck with the curse and died. Replacing him with a kidnapped villager, he headed off to the stronghold. After finding it, he places 4 out of the 12 eyes and he ends the episode and continues work off camera. The next episode, we see the changes he made. The first thing you'll notice is that the villager DJ is missing, showing that the curse of boat cow will be passed on to anybody who tries to replace him. The more important change, though, is that the church is no longer made of quartz and was redesigned to become the water temple. This is where we see the first council formed. It's made up of multiple different members and are still establishing the power that they will soon hold throughout the land. At this point, both the council and Feige were in tough spots, as Pewds' bloodlust seemed to have subsided after the death of WaterSheep, with Pewds returning to a more neutral force in the world and carrying out simple demands made by WaterSheep, like when he was told to go west of the desert to find his new DJ in a mycelium biome. The best choice for the council and Feige to make were to not push him too far, as if they pushed him too far to one side, it could cause the opposite effect, making him rebel against them and join the other. That was until the death of Joergon II. A mere accident caused an opening to be taken advantage of by the council. They bestowed upon him a steed, a donkey named Bernie. Though Bernie seemed to be a simple donkey, he was being used by the council to keep an eye on Pewds and influence him into doing their bidding. The plan would have worked if it wasn't for Feige, who also shared a similar interest as the council. After Bernie tragically fell in battle during a raid in which Feige was present at, it threw a wrench into the council's plan, and since Pewds was too far away at this point, there was little they could do about it. Feige then took the opportunity and granted him a steed like no other, a seemingly unkillable companion that would stay by his side till the end. PeePeePooPoo. PeePeePooPoo might just seem like a normal pig, and for the most part he is, but he embodies the goal set by Feige to drive Pewds away from the council and towards his side once again. As the boat cow curse strikes again with the mushroom cow being replaced by a zombie pigman after his disappearance, PeePeePooPoo was willing to carry out Feige's plans, had it not been for Pewds saying he was disposable, and no one could replace Joergon.
Gosh, I missed Joergon. There will never be another Joergon. Listen, you're the only dispensable character that I dare to bring with me at this point. Well, you really wanted me to say it out loud, didn't you?
This was where P4 went AWOL. No longer following the plan set by Feige to destroy the council and having Pewds under his control, P4 was after a new objective: to kill PewDiePie and take everything from him. For now, as Pewds builds up the P4 army to take on the Wither, the council has been finalized, and the son of WaterSheep is now the head of the council. If you're wondering how I know that this sheep is indeed WaterSheep's son, then I'll break it down. There's a 50-50 chance that he is WaterSheep's son. The way I got 50-50 was after he was born and then the herd was moved across from the farm, there was an extensive amount of breeding and killing of the sheep, as well as a separation and recoloring of sheep. So with this in mind, I was able to calculate the chances of him being the son, or at least a direct relative of WaterSheep, by spending a couple of hours using mathematical equations of the highest caliber. I was finally able to break down every variable and calculate the possibility. There's a 50% chance that the head of the council is his son, and there's a 50% chance that it's not his son. We only use the biggest of brains on this channel. Now that I showed you my calculations and why I'm completely correct and should not be challenged on the subject, I figured I should also mention that the pigmen fell to the curse of the boat cow, and IKEA Bird 1 rose to the occasion and took his place as DJ. Realizing that the P4 army will destroy everything the council is trying to achieve, they attempt to sabotage his plans, but with P4 dying at the hands of Pewds trying to heal him, they figure that there's no need as P4 is dead, ignorant to the fact that P4 will continue to live on as long as there's a vessel from his army he can possess. Continually meeting with the council for advice, time passes and Pewds meets Joergon III, as well as Ulabrita, and stumbling upon a white cat with blue eyes, taming both a white cat and a black cat, one of which will play a role much later on. But until then, nothing of note happens to his world. After building a monument for WaterSheep in the side of the mountain, the council was feeling gracious and provided Pewds with a thunderstorm he so desperately desired to fight the Wither. Turning his P4 army into zombie pigmen to fight the Wither with, the council saw this as an end of a possible threat to their rule. With the defeat of the Wither and the beacon being made to honor those who have passed, Pewds seemingly was headed towards a brighter future. Even the council was unable to fully push him to do their deeds anymore. It seems as if Sven was finally able to bring him back from the brink. This is pretty heavy-handedly shown when he literally fought himself. He's fighting who he was in the past and facing the mistakes he made head on and finally letting go. This is where things begin to get complicated. In episode 26, IKEA Bird number 2 dies after flying into a cactus. It's unknown if he was deliberately thrown into one or just flew into one, but regardless, he died. In episode 27, he's back. You could say Pewds turned back time, bites the dust style, but after accidentally killing both IKEA Bird number 2 and the boat cow that ended up replacing IKEA Bird number 1 after it died, he shifts back to the timeline he was originally on. This is evidence that there is not just one reality in this world. There are multiple realities, and Pewds has some control over what realities he can go to. But I'll compare it to like throwing a dart at a board. You can try your best to hit a target, but that doesn't mean you will. Much like losing a game of darts, there may be drawbacks to a shifting of realities. This would pose as a problem, but it seems as if he learned his lesson from the first time he tried it, so there's nothing too big to worry about since he knows playing with fire will get him burned. Moving past, Pewds goes on to meet Binkt and his brother Oget, the latter of which dies, not before the encounter with a familiar face we haven't seen for a while. They run into Faggy in the forest. The brothers proceed to attack Faggy, something Faggy won't forget about. When their adventuring was done though, Pewds brought back a new friend in the form of Binkt and Sven's BF. He throws a wedding for Sven and his BF where they have a kid at the end of the ceremony. All is right for the time being. The white cat disappears, and as Pewds makes his way to the council, he finds a lone pig in the temple. We can only assume that this is P4 trying to convince the council to join him in his mission to take everything away from Pewds. The council refuses, and while Pewds sets off fireworks with Sven's family in Ulabrita, the council scrambles to find a way to prevent P4 from being able to betray Pewds. Remember, at this point, even though the son has not yet forgiven Pewds for what he did to his father, he still needs Pewds to deal with the Ender Dragon to weaken Faggy's forces. As they say, birds of a feather stick together. With the Ender Dragon working with Faggy, they could overpower the Council of WaterSheep. So even though the Council's plan is to eventually destroy Pewds, they have a bigger threat at hand. With every domino falling into place for Pewds to finally make his way towards the end, the Council, in fear of what P4 might do, tries to warn Pewds of P4's betrayal by striking the PeePeePooPoo monument with lightning as a sign not understood by Pewds. It was their last-ditch effort, but now it's up to fate to decide what happens next. As Pewds gets ready to enter the end, PeePeePooPoo betrays him and pushes him in, not ready for the fight that's to come. Pewds, in a desperate attempt, tries to fight the dragon, but ultimately dies after falling from a high place. This was just another simple death though. He respawned in a bed and just went back to fight it again. This isn't what P4 meant by take everything from Pewds. He wanted everything taken away. When Pewds made his way back to the end portal, fully prepared to fight the dragon this time, he goes to ride PeePeePooPoo into battle, but P4 had other plans. In the act of ultimate betrayal, PeePeePooPoo jumps off into the void, with Pewds still atop his saddle. A final act of betrayal to deliver PewDiePie his final death. Falling into the void doesn't just mean losing your stuff, you lose your ability to be a part of that reality. Pewds reawakens in his bed, as if nothing has changed except for the fact that his stuff was gone, oblivious to the shifts in the reality of the world around him. Waking to a reality where he didn't die a final death, he runs back to the end to finally kill the dragon, leaving the previous reality behind, not knowing what will happen to it. After slaying the dragon with a bed and a shot from the IKEA bird arrow, he celebrates with his friends and family next to IKEA Tower, only Sven knowing what just happened to Pewds. Everyone else, however, may not be the same. Life continues and waits for no one, so Pewds goes on to other activities, during which he meets face to face with Faggy. Faggy claims he was sent by WaterSheep, but the council tries to tell Pewds he's lying by causing a thunderstorm to suddenly appear. After Faggy disappears, Pewds moves on to more miscellaneous tasks, like going to collect his elytra and such. With the threat of a possible war with Faggy's army finally gone, the council moves to finally take out Pewds. Before they could do that, they have to take out the ones who keep him on the good path. Sven and his family. They almost succeeded. They were able to get Sven's BF and Sven's son onto the trampoline Pewds made for them. Their plan was to change to the physics surrounding the slime blocks to make it to where they're hard, so landing on them will kill whoever is bouncing. However, they were too anxious and sprung the trap too early, only causing Sven's BF to die, and not all three of them. Pewds caught onto his treachery and left to his faraway summer house. Feeling betrayed and lonely, the Beats begin to talk to him, slowly corrupting his mind and pushing him to their side. Faggy finally shows his face to Pewds. Pewds outright rejecting Faggy and blaming him for Sven's BF's death. Faggy knowing that if he can get Pewds to transform him, he can destroy both Pewds and the Council of WaterSheep, finally being able to rule the realm. After enduring the torture Pewds put him through, he was finally able to gain Pewds' trust. As Pewds gave Faggy the power he needed to transform, Faggy's first order of business was to kill Pewds. In a hard-fought battle, Pewds was able to come out victorious. Faggy, in his dying breath, was able to convince Pewds that it was WaterSheep who sent him. Then, as his final act, transferred his essence into the beetroot farm. Faggy, knowing that Pewds at the moment was the only one who could overthrow the Council of WaterSheep, so to establish his new order, he needed Pewds to believe he was dead, and the only ones he can trust are the beetroots. With a fiery heart, Pewds knows what needs to be done. He overthrows the WaterSheep Council, establishing a new order. An order of Beetroot. As the day begins anew, the Council of Beetroot now is in control. Everyone is gone. Faggy, at the head of it all, knows that without Sven and everyone else he loves, Pewds will be easy to manipulate into doing their bidding, unknowingly leaving one familiar face left: the White Cat. Nonetheless, the Council of Beetroot demanded sacrifices that Pewds could not always keep up with. This angered the Council, as they needed sacrifices to push Pewds towards the edge. In their anger, they revealed the twin brother of Faggy. In the beginning, the two chickens we saw, the one that was punched was Faggy, and he did not forget what Pewds did to him and wanted retribution for it. The one that was fed is Faggy, who wanted no part in his brother's plans. Yet Faggy needed Faggy to act as his vessel and keep the beetroot he resided in alive until he can enact his ultimate plans. Faggy warns Pewds of the Council's true intentions. Knowing the truth, Pewds plays along with the Beetroot Council as to not raise any suspicion that he knows what's really going on. Listening to the demands of the council, he finishes the new IKEA tower. As he goes to destroy the old IKEA tower, he finds his friends trapped underneath. Stopping himself from blowing the tower and his friends up, Pewds runs down to reunite with his friends, only to see that the council stood behind the lever to the TNT, looking down upon them. From where he stood, it must seem like an 18-karat run of bad luck. Truth is,
the game was rigged from the start.
As the sun rises over the meatball, we see everything as it was prior to an explosion. Another reality, it seems to be. one in which the Council of Beetroot hasn't fully taken over. Overthrowing the council before they have a chance to cause any destruction, he remembers Fei for helping him find his friends and builds him a home, making him king of all the chickens who roam the land. The true final act of Fei being to repay Binkt for what he did to one of his kin back in the forest when he and Pewds first met. With Binkt out of the picture, the son of WaterSheep meets with Pewds, telling him to bring the Council of WaterSheep back. Based on his failures from the past, this time the son doesn't intend to kill Pewds, but rather turn him into a vessel for his father to come back in. After sacrificing a sheep to summon the spirit of WaterSheep, a fierce battle takes place between Pewds and the resurrected WaterSheep. With Pewds thinking he came away from the battle victorious, WaterSheep was able to imbue himself within Pewds' spirit momentarily, until Pewds exploded from the sheer amount of power WaterSheep held. For the time being, Pewds is still not a perfect vessel for WaterSheep, so the council must wait until he is strong enough to handle the immense power. Having him perform acts such as slaughtering chickens, torturing Ingvar the 11th, building a weapon of mass destruction, it's not until a survivor from the AC-130 attack makes him face the reality that he became what he always thought WaterSheep was. After coming to this realization, he goes to question the council. The council, realizing he knows too much, sends Ingvar after him and Sven. He blacks out. 3 months have passed. Ah shit, here we go again. We're in a new reality from where the series last left off. Even I'm not too sure how. Maybe because separation of Sven from Pewds caused the rift in the timeline to be deleted. We can be sure it's a new reality though, as Sven is missing, new structures have been built, and Ingvar is still chasing Pewds. Pewds himself has no recollection of the world around him. He doesn't remember the names of certain friends like Dinnerbone and his girlfriend. As he goes around looking for Sven, he starts discovering what an alternate version of himself did in the world while under the assumption that he created it. Which, in a sense, he did. As he runs into the White Cat once again, the White Cat gives him a riddle that will lead him to where Sven is. Except this time, Pewds is more accepting of the White Cat, and even giving him the name Sven the Cat. After finding Sven and reintroducing him to everybody, as Sven is the only one who's aware of the shifting realities, Pewds proceeds to make Sven have a baby with his baby. You could say that due to the reality shift, it was actually Sven's BF, but with a different color collar, but I haven't found a lot of evidence to support that, but, well, we'll leave it on the table as a possibility for the sake of ease of mind. Anyways, after realizing what he's done with his memory slowly coming back to him, he blames the Council of WaterSheep for the actions he committed. Taking aim at the church with a TNT cannon, Sven tries to reason with him not to destroy the council in fear of being another martyr. Pewds ignores the calls and blows up the church along with parts of the meatball, finally free from the influence of the corrupt council for now. The son of Sven and the now named Deep was born with the ability of foresight, banishing himself to the nether realm as to prevent anyone from being able to use his power. The son, now named Alabama, watches over the realm, protecting those who venture through it. That only leaves Sven the Cat, or rather the nameless White Cat of this realm. His intentions and goals are still unknown, but each day, Pewds is becoming more weary of this cat, even believing in the idea that he now exists in an alternate universe, where things like Deep shouldn't exist, and nothing should be real.
This is your fault, Deep. We've entered an alternate universe where you shouldn't exist and nothing should be real.
An idea not too far from the truth. The only problem now is Binkt. Skipping through a lot of the yelling and abuse the cat has to deal with for now, Pewds shifts into a different RTX reality, where everything and everyone is completely different, to a degree that even Sven doesn't exist in the reality. After shifting back, things continue as they were previously. That is until a subject of Binkt comes around. Binkt in this reality is still missing, and despite him finding an alternate universe counterpart in the form of Bane, it just wasn't the same for Pewds. Trapping the White Cat in jail, Pewds uses his power to travel to a different dimension to where Binkt was still possibly alive. As he does so, he ends up in a reality where the cat is out of the jail cell. Seeing this as an act of rebellion, Pewds shoots the cat, killing him instantly. Understanding the possible repercussions for his actions in his reality, he again uses all he has to shift to a different reality where both the cat and Binkt are alive at the same time. Choosing to stay in this reality, not knowing the shift in the timeline that he has just caused, we see Pewds continue to abuse the White Cat, much like he has already done to a familiar face in the series. Only time will tell what will come from this shift in reality, and the warping of time caused by Pewds in his attempt to reunite and save his family. All I can say is that We've already met the white cat in Alabama before. You just might not recognize him from what they were previously. Okay, got that? That's the lore so far. So, now let's spend some time talking about the philosophy we can find in his Minecraft series. In a surprising turn of events, exploring the philosophy behind the series is a lot simpler than explaining the actual lore. This is partially due to the fact that a lot of things have a direct correlation to real-life events that has or are currently taking place. Reflecting his love for the Greeks, Pewds hid the philosophy not through layers of complicated meaning or keeping certain elements in the dark, but rather by forcing his audience to ask themselves why. Not, why is this 30-year-old man yelling at a sheep in a block game, but more sophisticated questions such as, why did he keep building more grand in scale structures? Even though he had what he wanted to portray in his mind, telling his audience what it was wouldn't teach them anything, but letting them arrive to their own conclusion, even if wrong, still fulfills the goal he sought to achieve. Much like Socrates, he taught by asking thought-provoking questions, with the main purpose being to think, and maybe even learn to perceive things from a different perspective. In the age-old question, author intent versus audience interpretation, which one is more correct? To Pewds, it doesn't matter. His goal is not to preach to his audience, but guide them in the ways of thinking for yourself and formulating your own opinions on life. As for the allegories and metaphors seen throughout the series, almost every character has a unique attribute to them that in some way reflects PewDiePie's life and personality. Let's start off with Sven, his loyal companion throughout the entire playthrough. Going on to state multiple times that if Sven dies, the series is over, most of the audience, myself included, laughed along and just hoped that he didn't die. It wasn't until recently when I stopped to think, why though? Why does this single character hold so much significance in what happens to the series? So I want to ask, what happens when we as viewers stop watching a series? The series in question would undoubtedly end. Why would a series continue without an audience to watch it? Sven represents us as the audience and our interest. The idea of Sven dying is the idea that we simply lose interest in the series. Something that further illustrates that idea is the fact that the series has gone on break indefinitely until massive updates. I doubt it's because he doesn't enjoy playing anymore, it most likely has to do with the drop in viewership. For reference, the 30 episodes it took for him to defeat the Ender Dragon were all hitting around 15 to 20 million views each, capping out at 40 million views on the first episode. It steadily drops to 11 million over the course of the 4 episodes after beating the Ender Dragon, and then drastically to 7 million literally that next episode. He was only able to hit 10 million views again after taking a 3-month break from the game, so the idea that Sven representing the fans' interest in the series is not too far off. Though a lot of people still very much enjoy the series, it's obvious that the interest wasn't there anymore for a majority. So in a sense, Sven died. Most of the fans lost interest. Or at least he's in a comatose type state waiting to be yanked out of a life support machine when Pewds is forced to do a Sven birthday video as to not anger the fellow 19-year-olds for forgetting.
Oh, I miss his birthday. I'm the worst father. I don't deserve to say there are you winning son meme.
Binked, surprisingly, has a funny correlation to the idea of YouTube trending. Binked's thing, you could say, is to disappear and reappear at random times. On YouTube, views come in waves of trends. When one thing is trendy, if you jump on it soon enough, you can easily ride that wave, getting a big boost to your channel. Sometimes though, you might not catch it in time, and just left to do your own thing and grow at a slower pace than you would have if you caught the trend. These waves obviously don't last forever, so don't worry if you miss an opportunity. Binked represents this idea though. Sometimes Pewds is able to catch the trend and ride it home, and sometimes he doesn't, usually by his own choice. Sometimes Binked is there, and sometimes, well, you get the picture. Speaking of YouTube, Joergon and the Councils actually have a strange connection to each other. Joergon represents us as an audience, not our interest like Sven does, but us as a whole. And the Councils represent the stages of YouTube and Pewds' channel. There are both 3 Joergons and 3 Councils. Joergon 1 represents his fanbase from the beginning of his channel, always sticking with Pewds, and that's pretty much it, not much to it. Joergon dying was kind of his own fault as he suffocated himself in a wall instead of teleporting not in a wall. Think of this as a time Pewds had to turn off the comment section. He turned them off because of a lot of spam was filling the comment sections. The first council, the Council of WaterSheep, represents the earlier days of YouTube. Pewds was able to freely live and do what he wanted for the most part at that time. Maybe with YouTube stepping in, needing him to be a part of stuff like YouTube Rewind and such, there wasn't demands being made by YouTube that would directly affect how Pewds ran his channel. Joergon 2 represents his audience during what people consider the dark ages of his channel in 2016 to 17. Joergon 2's death was at the hands of Pewds himself. After making some content not a lot of people were interested in, and maybe you can throw in being more edgy than when a majority of his audience was first introduced to him, in a way he kinda killed his own audience. Side note, I don't think it's as dramatic as people make it out to be, but the point still stands that the audience was slowly shrinking despite his sub count still growing. I wouldn't completely put this on Pewds though, as there was changes in YouTube happening at the same time. Just like there were changes in the Council. The Council of Beetroot represents the time YouTube became more demanding. Videos needed to be at least 10 minutes long to survive, there were restrictions on what kind of videos could be made, plus on top of all that, Pewds also had a lot on his plate going on, such as Scare PewDiePie and other big projects. Then finally, Joergon 3, he represents the fanbase as it is now. Coming from the previous two fanbases, the audience he has now is, well, chill. It's pretty open to the changes Pewds makes with the channel. Still wanting to see certain things, but not making it feel like he has to do a certain thing for them to continue to support him. Just being a dedicated audience who wants to see him succeed because, well, they like him. The third council being, there is no council. Pewds decided to walk away from trying to appeal to everyone and just started making stuff that made him happy. And I mean, based on what he has said in recent videos, it seems like he's still going with that idea. Just doing what he wants and enjoy sharing what he loves is probably the reason why his audience is so willing to stick with him. Then we have WaterSheep, which funny enough, in a way, represents Pewds himself. WaterSheep is always to blame when something happens, never catching a break and constantly being belittled for anything he does. It sounds like how the media treats PewDiePie. No matter what he does, it never seems to be enough for them. Even if he donates to a charity, they'll be sure to mention how he's a controversial YouTuber and bring up all the stuff from the past, even if he's already explained and apologized for it, just so they can belittle and degrade him. Just like he does to WaterSheep. Okay, sorry I had to. It got a little too serious there. But it's still funny how his relationship with WaterSheep reflects his relationship with the media. If you think it's only the characters we see in the story that hold any meaning through the form of metaphors or allegories, then you would be wrong. You can also find it in what he builds. There are some simpler ones you can pick up on, like building the Japanese-style house for Sven. It can be seen as his desire to make Japan his new home and finally make the move to live there. I'd rather focus on two of them specifically though, that being his house and the monuments like IKEA Tower and the Joergon Monument. To start off, his house. In the first episode, he said, bump the green top, slap some cobblestone around that bad boy, and called it a day. Even before he delved too deep into Greek philosophy, it always seemed as if he followed somewhat in Diogenes' footsteps, as he never needed anything too crazy or fancy when it comes to materialistic things. Besides maybe a more expensive wardrobe, he never really spent a lot of money on luxury cars or huge mansions, or if he did, he never talked about it or showed it off publicly. It also shows how he went about running his channel. He was okay with the simpler cobblestone house, just like he was okay with entertaining a smaller audience playing horror games. It wasn't until he started growing and making more development when he would upgrade his home, eventually making his way up to this huge Japanese-style mansion in the later episodes. But maybe he made it that big out of a sense of being pressured to have some huge monument to his success. How it reflects over his channel is, it's easy to see at some points he made certain decisions more out of feeling of needing to come off as a celebrity. This might not make too much sense to the majority of us who don't have 100 million subs, but when you become famous enough, at some point you have to act like it. You can't be some huge Hollywood star and just walk around in rags and go to McDonald's. That's not what a celebrity's like. I mean, you can, but then you'd seem like some normal person. Crazy. The point I'm trying to make here is that at some points in Pewds' career, it seemed as if he was pressured by the idea of being a big celebrity, so he needed to act like one. Thankfully, he realized that he didn't have to act like that and he could continue being honest with who he was as a person to his audience. This idea is seen as, though his Japanese-styled house looks very big and is a monument to his success, on the inside it's mostly empty, as only a little part of it matters to him. I guess you could say we're his treasure? Haha, get it? Cause like, the chests are the only things he cares about, and he cares about us. Moving on to the monuments. Each one he builds is a monument to his past. The water temple being for WaterSheep. The Joergon statue being for Joergon, and IKEA Tower being the culmination of his history in the world. Even though some of the monuments may represent mistakes, such as the 2 Joergons dying or killing WaterSheep, he doesn't hide them. He builds the monuments not because he misses the past, but to show where he came from. Even if you look back at the past and things seem like they were better back then, it doesn't change the fact that he's happier now, with everything he has, with everything he can look forward to, and with everything he's been able to create. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and maybe even subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Totally not having this outro here to flex the merch or anything, which, by the way, I bought an extra large because I thought the sleeves would be longer, but it just made it wider, so it's a little big on me. But yeah, if the off chance PewDiePie ever sees this video, I just want to say thank you. Last year was probably the greatest summer of my life, and the Minecraft series was really the cherry on top of all that. It made it all the more memorable, so thank you. And even though it might not seem like it, everyone can see how hard you work to make people happy, and I hope you'll continue to do that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.